Every single decision that a computer makes, every branch in a program, every comparison, every filter, every search, traces back to a remarkably simple idea: asking yes or no questions and then combining the answers. That right there is Boolean logic. And unlike some foundational computer science concepts that require a bit of mathematical background to appreciate, Boolean logic is immediately intuitive. You already use it every day without even calling it that. So where does it come from? Well, in the 1840s, a mathematician named George Boole developed an algebraic system for reasoning about logic. Instead of working with numbers, he worked with truth tables, things that are either true or false, and defined operations that you can perform on them. His goal was to formalize the way that humans reason and to treat logic the way that you treat arithmetic. Well, a century later, Claude Shannon, an engineer at Bell Labs, wrote a master's thesis showing that Boole's logical algebra could be implemented directly using electrical currents. A switch that is open corresponds to false, but a switch that is closed corresponds to true. Combine switches in the right arrangements, and now you can compute any logical expression physically in hardware. That insight is the direct ancestor of every processor that's ever been built. The connection between Boolean algebra and circuit design is what makes it foundational. It's not just an abstract mathematical curiosity, it's the reason that computers can actually make any decisions at all. In Boolean logic, every single value is exactly one of two things. It's either true or false. That's the entire domain. In the context of computing, we know something else that can either be on or off, and that's bits. So we can represent true as being 1 and false as being 0. A Boolean value holds one bit of information. In most programming languages, you'll work with Boolean values constantly. The result of any comparison is x greater than 5. Are these two strings equal? The result is a Boolean. That's what it gives you. Every single conditional statements like if and while run on Booleans. Loops will continue while a condition is true and stops when it becomes false. Worded differently, loops will run while a condition is 1 and stops when it becomes 0. Now, the three fundamental operations that you can act on a Boolean is and, or, and not. Everything else, every logical operation that a computer performs, every gate in a circuit is built from the combination of these three right here. So let's go ahead and start with not. Not is the simplest operation. It takes a Boolean value and it flips it. So true would become false and false would become true. That's it. Now, in most programming languages, not is expressed as an exclamation point. So using this, if I were to do exclamation point true, this is actually false because we're inverting the true into false. Similarly, exclamation point false would be equal to true. Now, where do you use this? Well, simply anywhere that you want to invert a condition. Let's say you have a variable named is logged in. Well, if you want to check if someone is not logged in, all you're going to do is put an exclamation point before it, and we're going to say if not logged in, then you can do whatever operation you want below this. Pretty self-explanatory. Not simply just flips it from true to false or false to true, or you can think about it as 1 to 0 or 0 to 1. The next one that we'll talk about is and. So and takes two Boolean values and returns true only if both of them are true. If either of them or both are, then the result is false. So if we take a look at this truth table, we can see the full set of possibilities. Given x and y are any two variables that we are comparing, x is false and y is false, and we AND them, the result is going to be false. If it's false and true, it's still false. If it's true and false, it's still false. The only way that it's true is if x is true, y is true, we AND them, the result is going to be true. So as you can see here, even if one of them is false, our result is still false. The only way to get true is that they are both true. That gives us a true when we AND them. Now, in code, and is typically written as two ampersands. I'm sorry, I suck at writing them. In languages like C, Java, JavaScript, or they could simply just be the keyword and, like in Python, but this is usually how you're going to check in programming languages if you want to AND two conditions. The real world interpretation is exactly what the word suggests. You can only enter a building if you have a keycard and the door is unlocked. Both conditions have to hold. One without the other doesn't get you in. In code, use and constantly for compound conditions. If you ever want to find users who are both 18 and have a verified email, that would be represented as age greater than or equal to 18 and email verified. So this is how you would check for both of those conditions. Both the age must be greater than or equal to 18 and they must have email verified for the overall condition to be true and for us to execute all the code right here. So OR takes two Boolean values and returns true if at least one of them is true. It only returns false when both of them are false. So looking at this truth table for the OR operation, here are all the possible outputs. So given inputs X and Y, if they're both false and we OR them, it's going to be false because neither one of them were true. Now, if we have true in any one of these positions, so if we have it here, here, or if they're both here, then we're going to get true for all these outputs. But because the first one had no true in it, we're going to get false. Now in code, OR is typically written as two pipes in most C style languages, or in Python, it is just as the keyword OR. So you most likely see it as one of these two. The real world interpretation of this is you can pay for a purchase if you have cash or a credit card. Either one will work, but having both is also fine. Another example is if you wanted to show a warning to users who are either unverified or have an expired subscription, that would be expressed as if not verified, and then the two pipes for OR, subscription expired, then we're going to run this. So if either one of these are true, if either they're not verified, or if they have an expired subscription, this is going to run. Now, if they're both false, it's not going to run, but if they're both true, it's still going to run. Hopefully that makes sense. A subtle but important point is that in Boolean logic, OR is inclusive. And what I'm talking about is this very last line in our truth table, where true or true is actually true. Now this is different from everyday English of the use OR, which often implies exclusivity, as in you could have either the left one or the right one, meaning you could have either one, but you can't have both. Now in logic and programming, OR always means at least one, but possibly both. The exclusive version, true if exactly one is true but false if both are true, is a separate operation called XOR, which we'll talk about later. Now the real power of Boolean logic comes from combining these operations to express complex conditions. So say you're building an authentication check. A user should be allowed access if they're an admin or if they are verified and their subscription is active. What would this actually look like? Because now we have three different conditions we want to check, not just two. So for example, in code, this would look like this. If the user is an admin, then we're going to allow this, or we have this secondary condition, which is inside of this second set of parentheses that we have right here. And we're saying if they're verified and they're active, so if both of these conditions are true, then this whole thing inside of here is going to evaluate to true. So then we have is admin or true, and we know it doesn't even matter for admin because we're unauthenticated. So in more plain English, we're going to basically say, hey, if this person's admin, we let them in, or if they're verified and they're active, we could also let them in. The parentheses really matter here, just like they matter in arithmetic. It's good to know that AND has a higher precedence than OR in most languages, just like multiplication has a higher precedence than addition, so it binds more tightly. But when there's any doubt, always use parentheses explicitly. It makes the logic clear and prevents bugs. And you can chain these as long as you need. The logic composes infinitely, and the computer evaluates all of it as a sequence of simple true or false operations on individual bits. Now, the next topic I want to cover is truth tables, but we've actually already shown this, and these are the tables that we've shown here. When working out how a Boolean expression behaves across all possible inputs, the tool is a truth table. You list every single combination. Here, let's go to our other one so it's a little cleaner. You're going to list out every single combination in these two columns across all possible inputs. And for each one, you compute the output of the expression over here. For a two input expression, there are four possible combinations. So that's why this right here is 1, 2, 3, 4, because we only have two inputs. For 3 inputs, it goes to 8. For 4 inputs, it's 16, and it doubles with each input. Or you could think of it as 2 to the power of n, which is the same growth that you've seen throughout this series. Truth tables aren't just a classroom exercise. When you're designing a circuit, a conditional statement, or even a logic gate, you often start by writing out exactly what output you need for every single possible input, and then figure out which Boolean expression produces that output. This table right here is the specification, and the Boolean expression is the implementation. Now there's tons of other logic gates. There's stuff like NAND, NOR, XORs, XNORs. There's a bunch of different ones. However, the only one that I really want to touch on is the XOR one because I feel like it's really useful. So the XOR can be interpreted as the exclusive OR. The XOR returns true if exactly one of its inputs is true, but not both. That last statement is really important to what makes an XOR an exclusive OR. So let's go ahead and construct another truth table for this one. So here's the truth table of the XOR logic gate. And as you can see, the only difference between the OR and the XOR truth table is this last line right here. So reading over this again, remember XOR is when exactly one of its inputs is true. So you can see first line, we have no true. The second line, we have one true, which matches the case. So we're gonna get a true. Second line, we have third line, we have another just singular truth. So we're gonna get true. But then the last line has two truths, which when we have two, that is not good. So we're going to get a false instead of a true, which is why it's an exclusive OR. So this is kind of the one that you think of more in day-to-day language. If you say, hey, you can have this or this, you could have one or you could have the other, but you can't actually have both. XOR shows up constantly in low-level computing. It's used in binary addition. When you add 2 bits, the sum of the bit is the XOR of the inputs, and the carry bit is the AND of the inputs. It's heavily used in cryptography because XORing a value with a key twice returns the original value. Applying it is its own inverse. It's used in error detection and correction, checksums, hash functions, and graphics operations. Once you know what XOR does, you actually just start seeing it everywhere. Now, another idea that I want to bring up is the idea of short circuit evaluation. Most programming languages implement this for and OR, and it's worth understanding because it affects both performance and how you actually write your code, specifically your if statements. So let's go ahead and write something out so I can show you what I mean by this. So in this example, we are checking if the user is logged in or if they're an admin. And so you can think about how the computer is actually going to operate this. So first we're going to check, is the user logged in? And so if this evaluates to true, we know that the second part of this statement doesn't actually matter. This could be true or false, and we're still going to output this code. So why would we waste extra resources, checking this against the other one? That's just wasteful. So what the compiler is hopefully going to do is see that this first one's true, and it's not even going to look at this. It's going to say, I don't even care what admin is, and it's going to immediately go to the code. This is the whole idea behind short circuit evaluation. Now, the same idea applies to false conditions in AND statements. So let's take this example. We are checking if the user is logged in and the session is active. Well, since we're using an AND statement, if this first expression right here, if is logged in, if this returns false, we know that no matter if the session is active or not, we're not even going to enter this code. So the compiler is hopefully going to see this, short circuit, and be like, hey, this is already false. It doesn't matter if session active is true or false. We're not writing this regardless. So we're just going to skip right past it and go to the next line of code. Now, I won't write it out, but I will say the most applicable use of this short circuit evaluation is for null checking. So if you want to put an if condition on something like, let's say, a list, and you want to check if list.size equals something, well, if the list is null, you can't actually run .size on it. You're going to get a null exception. So what you can do is you can say if list is not equal to null and list.size whatever, well then if list is null, the first condition is going to be false. So the second condition is never evaluated. So you never try to access that .size or the .length whatever on that list, which would actually prevent you from crashing your program. This short circuit is what makes this pattern safe. If both conditions were always evaluated, this would fail whenever list was null. Hopefully that makes sense. Moving on to logic gates. This is where Boolean logic crosses from software into hardware. A logic gate is a physical circuit that implements a Boolean operation. An AND gate, for example, has 2 inputs and 1 singular output. The output is a high voltage, or 1, only when both inputs are high voltage, and a 0 otherwise. And then something like an OR gate outputs 1 when either input is 1. A NOT gate, also called an inverter, flips its single output, so it'll go from 0 to 1, or it'll go from 1 to 0. There are also gates for compound operations. The NAND one that you see here is not AND. It outputs 0 only when both inputs are 1 and 1 otherwise. NOR is not OR. XNOR is not XOR. NAND is particularly important. It's what's called functionally complete. You can build any logical operation whatsoever using only NAND gates. And or not XOR anything. This means a computer could theoretically be built from a single type of component repeated. In practice, real chips use all the gate types for efficiency, but the fact that the NAND alone is sufficient is a profound result in logic theory. Modern processors contain billions of these gates. They're implemented using transistors, typically 2 transistors for a NAND gate, arranged so that the current flows through the output only when the conditions for the logic gate are met. The Boolean operation is baked into the physical arrangement of the components. Boolean logic is not a complicated idea. It's the formalization of something you already do naturally, asking yes or no questions and reason about how the answers combine. And or and not are the 3 primitive operations. Everything else, XOR, NAND, NOR, the complex conditionals in your code, the query filters in your database, the gates in your processor are built from those 3. George Boole gave us the algebra, Claude Shannon showed us how to build it in hardware, and every programmer uses it every single day whether they're thinking about it explicitly or not. If you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down below. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.